I was sipping wine in my beach house in Florida when my phone exploded with notifications at 4 a.m. The security company's urgent voice cut through my drowsy confusion. "Mrs. Whitman, your daughter-in-law just triggered your apartment alarm. She's claiming she's the new owner and demanding we shut it off." I sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. My smile was slow and deliberate as I said, "Perfect. Let her in, and make sure the cameras catch everything." That phone call was the culmination of months of deception, but to understand how I ended up there, I need to take you back to when my life seemed perfect. My name is Christy Whitman, and at 68 years old, I thought I had everything figured out. 3 years had passed since my husband Gerald died of a heart attack, leaving me with the real estate empire we'd built together over 40 years. $8 million in assets, they told me at the evaluation. Not bad for a couple who started with nothing but determination and a $500 loan from my mother. The crown jewel of our portfolio was my Chicago penthouse. 3,500 square feet of pristine luxury overlooking Lake Michigan with floor-to-ceiling windows that made you feel like you were floating above the city. Gerald and I bought it as our retirement dream, though he only got to enjoy it for 2 years. The morning sun would paint golden streaks across the marble floors, and I'd often find myself standing there with my coffee, remembering how he'd wrap his arms around me and say, "We did good, didn't we, Chris?" My son Mark was 42, my only child and the apple of my eye. Or so I thought. He'd married Jennifer 5 years ago in a ceremony I paid for entirely. $200,000 for their dream wedding at the Palmer House, complete with ice sculptures and a 12-piece orchestra. Jennifer had cried when I offered throwing her arms around me and calling me Mom for the first time. "I never had a real mother." She'd sobbed into my shoulder. "You don't know what this means to me." I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. Jennifer was 35 when they married, with honey blonde hair she wore in perfect waves and green eyes that sparkled when she smiled. She worked as a financial advisor at a small firm downtown, and I was impressed by her ambition. Mark had met her at a conference where she was presenting about retirement planning. "She's brilliant, Mom," he'd gushed over dinner one night. "You'll love her." And I did love her. I loved how she remembered my birthday, how she called just to chat, how she complimented my cooking even though we both knew I was terrible at it. When they struggled with the down payment on their house in Lincoln Park, I wrote a check for $150,000 without blinking. When Jennifer's car broke down, I bought her a new BMW for Christmas. When they wanted to vacation in Italy but couldn't afford it, guess who funded their 3-week adventure? Looking back, I can see the pattern. But when you're lonely and your only child seems happy, you overlook things. You explain away the occasional odd comment or suspicious glance. You tell yourself you're being paranoid when something feels off. The first real warning sign came 6 months before that 4 a.m. phone call. Jennifer had started visiting more often, always with a thermos of her special herbal tea blend. "It's so good for your memory, Mom," she'd say, pouring me cup after cup. "All these antioxidants and brain-boosting herbs. I worry about you here all alone." During these visits, she'd become increasingly interested in my business affairs. At first, the questions seemed innocent enough. "How do you manage all these properties by yourself?" she'd ask, her forehead creased with concern. "It must be so overwhelming. The insurance alone must be a nightmare to keep track of." I'd wave off her worries. "I've been doing this for 40 years, sweetheart. I could manage these properties in my sleep." But Jennifer persisted. She wanted to know about property taxes, maintenance schedules, which banks held which mortgages. She offered to organize my files, create spreadsheets, modernize my systems. "You're still keeping paper records, Mom. That's so risky. What if there's a fire?" Meanwhile, Mark had started a new refrain during our weekly dinners. "You look tired, Mom," he'd say, studying my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Are you sleeping okay? Eating properly? Maybe you should think about slowing down." "I'm 68, not 98. I'd remind him, but he'd just shake his head. "Dad wouldn't want you working yourself to death. Why don't you let Jennifer help with the business? She's got the expertise, and it would take so much pressure off you." The turning point came during a Sunday dinner at their house. I'd brought my famous peach cobbler, the one recipe I actually excelled at, and we were enjoying coffee in their living room. Jennifer had excused herself to take a phone call, and I went to use the powder room. But as I passed their home office, I noticed something that made me freeze. My financial statements were spread across their desk. Bank accounts, property deeds, insurance policies, even my will. Documents I knew I'd never shared with them. My heart hammered as I stepped closer, and that's when I saw Jennifer's notebook lying open beside them. In her neat, precise handwriting, she'd cataloged every asset I owned. But it wasn't just a list. There were notes in the margins that made my blood run cold. Chicago penthouse, $3 million minimum, $4 million if marketed correctly. Florida beach house, $2.5 million in current market. Commercial properties, $5 million liquidation value. Bank accounts, accessible with POA. Timeline once M convinces her to sign papers 6 months max before we can claim incompetence. My hand shook as I photographed the pages with my phone. There was more, so much more. Research on elder care facilities with notes like minimum oversight and flexible medical standards. Printouts from legal websites about power of attorney and guardianship proceedings. A business card for someone named Dr. Harold Morrison, with "willing to cooperate" written on the back. I heard Jennifer's footsteps in the hallway and quickly returned to the powder room, splashing cold water on my face to calm the rage burning in my chest. When I returned to the living room, she smiled at me with those sparkling green eyes. "More coffee, Mom." I accepted the cup with steady hands, though inside I was screaming. My son, my baby boy, whom I'd nursed through chickenpox and cheered at Little League games, was plotting with his wife to destroy me. They didn't just want my money. They wanted to lock me away and steal my life. "Actually," I said, setting down the untouched coffee, "I'm feeling a bit under the weather. I think I'll head home early." Mark jumped up, all false concern. "Are you okay? You do look pale. Maybe we should take you to the doctor." "No need," I assured him, gathering my purse. "Just tired. You're right. I have been working too hard." Jennifer and Mark exchanged a look of triumph that they thought I missed. "That's what we've been trying to tell you," Jennifer said, patting my arm. "You need to start taking better care of yourself. We worry so much about you." As I drove home through the darkening streets of Chicago, tears blurred my vision. Not from sadness, but from pure, crystallized fury. They thought I was some doddering old fool ready to be discarded like yesterday's garbage. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I hadn't built an $8 million empire by being weak or stupid. By the time I reached my penthouse, my tears had dried, and my plan was already forming. If Jennifer and Mark wanted to play games, I'd show them how a master played. They'd schemed behind my back, smiled to my face while plotting my downfall. Well, two could play at that game, and I had decades more experience. I poured myself a generous glass of wine and stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the glittering city below. Gerald's voice echoed in my memory. "Never let them see you coming, Chris. The best revenge is served with a smile." "You're right, my love," I whispered to the night. "They want to take everything we built, let them try. But they're about to learn that this old woman has plenty of fight left in her." The next morning, I woke with renewed purpose. First order of business: hire the best private investigator money could buy. Through my attorney, I was connected with Sandra Kovac, a former FBI agent who specialized in family fraud cases. We met at a small cafe in Andersonville, far from any place Mark or Jennifer might frequent. Sandra was in her 50s with sharp brown eyes that missed nothing, and prematurely gray hair she wore, pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything I'd discovered, occasionally jotting notes in a leather-bound pad. "Mrs. Whitman," she said when I finished, "what you're describing is unfortunately more common than you'd think. Elder financial abuse by family members accounts for billions in losses annually. The good news is you caught it early. The bad news is they're already pretty far along in their plan." How far, I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "I'll need to do some digging, but from what you've described, they're in the final preparation stages. That doctor they mentioned, Dr. Morrison, I know of him. Lost his license in Indiana for falsifying medical records. If they're connected with him, they're serious about this." She agreed to take my case, and we established protocols for communication. Everything would go through encrypted channels, and we'd meet only in person at predetermined locations. I felt like I was in a spy movie, but Sandra assured me the precautions were necessary. If they're smart enough to plan this extensively, they're smart enough to monitor your communications. We need to stay ahead of them. Over the next 3 weeks, Sandra uncovered a web of deception that took my breath away. Jennifer's financial advisor facade hid a massive gambling addiction. She owed over $500,000 to various creditors, some of them the kind who break kneecaps when you're late on payments. Her salary couldn't even cover the interest, and the walls were closing in. She's been juggling credit cards, taking out loans, even borrowed from her employer's client fund, though she managed to replace it before anyone noticed, Sandra reported during one of our meetings. "She's desperate, Christy, and desperate people do terrible things." But that wasn't the worst of it. Sandra had managed to plant a listening device in Mark and Jennifer's home during a routine maintenance check by a trusted colleague posing as a utility worker. The recordings she played for me shattered what was left of my maternal heart. "Your mother's getting suspicious," Jennifer's voice crackled through Sandra's laptop speakers. "We need to move faster." "She's always been too sharp for her own good," Mark replied, and I could hear the resentment in his tone. "Even as a kid, I could never get anything past her." "Well, she won't be sharp much longer. I've increased the dosage in her tea. Doc Morrison says another month of regular consumption, and she'll start showing real symptoms. Confusion, memory lapses, maybe even mild hallucinations." "You're sure it's safe? I mean, I don't want to actually hurt her." Jennifer's laugh was cold. "Oh, now you develop a conscience. Your mother's sitting on $8 million while we're drowning in debt. The facility Morrison recommended is actually nice. She'll be comfortable." "For $3,000 a month, she better be comfortable. That's nothing compared to what we'll have once we control her assets. I've already got buyers interested in the penthouse. We can clear $4 million easy, maybe more if we stage it right." The conversation continued, outlining their plan in chilling detail. They'd already had Dr. Morrison create false medical records, showing I'd been diagnosed with early-onset dementia 6 months ago. They'd forged my signature on preliminary papers, practiced it until it was perfect. Jennifer had been meeting with estate lawyers, presenting herself as the concerned daughter-in-law, trying to help her declining mother-in-law. "The beauty is," Jennifer explained to Mark, "once she's declared incompetent, everything we've done becomes retroactively legitimate. Who's going to believe a crazy old woman who says her family stole everything?" Sandra paused the recording and looked at me with sympathy. "I'm sorry you had to hear that, Christy. I know this must be devastating." Devastating didn't begin to cover it, but beneath the pain a cold fury was building. "What else did you find?" "Jennifer's not working alone. Her brother Tony Castellano is involved. He was disbarred 2 years ago for forging client signatures on settlement documents. He's been providing the legal expertise, telling them exactly how to make everything look legitimate." She pulled up a photo on her laptop. Tony looked like Jennifer's opposite. Where she was polished and blonde, he was rough around the edges with dark hair and a face that had seen too many bar fights. He's got connections in the courthouse, people who owe him favors. He's been greasing palms to make sure their paperwork gets fast-tracked. How long before they make their move? I asked. Based on their conversations, they're planning to strike during your annual Florida vacation. Jennifer knows you always go for 2 weeks in March. That gives them time to file the guardianship papers, have you declared incompetent in absentia, and take control of everything before you even know what's happening. March was only 6 weeks away. 6 weeks to save my life's work and my freedom. But as I sat there in that little cafe surrounded by young professionals, typing on laptops and sipping overpriced lattes, I felt a strange calm descend over me. Sandra, I need you to keep monitoring them. Document everything. Every conversation, every meeting, every forged document. Can you do that? Already on it. But Christy, we should go to the police now. We have enough evidence. I shook my head. Not yet. They think they're hunting a deer. I want them to know they've cornered a lioness. When we strike, I want it to be devastating. Complete. I want them to lose everything the way they planned for me to lose everything. Sandra studied me for a long moment, then smiled. Remind me never to piss you off, Christy. What do you have in mind? I outlined my plan while Sandra took notes. Transfer assets to protective trusts. Install security systems they couldn't possibly know about. Set traps that would document their every crime. And most importantly, give them exactly what they wanted. A vulnerable old woman ready to be fleeced. You're going to let them rob you? Sandra asked, incredulous. I'm going to let them think they're robbing me. There's a difference. By the time they realize what's really happening, it'll be too late. As we prepared to leave, Sandra handed me a small device. Panic button. GPS-enabled direct line to my team and the police. Keep it on you at all times. These people are desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. I tucked it into my purse, hoping I'd never need it. But as I walked back to my car, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A familiar figure ducked into a doorway across the street. Tony Castellano had been watching us. The game had begun earlier than I'd anticipated, but that was fine. I'd been preparing for battles my whole life. This one would be no different except for one thing. This time I was fighting for more than money or property. I was fighting for justice, and I never lost when justice was on my side. If Jennifer and Tony thought they were clever, they had no idea what 40 years in real estate had taught me about strategy. Every successful deal I'd ever closed started with understanding my opponent's weaknesses and exploiting them ruthlessly. This would be no different except the stakes weren't measured in dollars, but in freedom. My first move was to visit Harold Stern, my attorney for the past 25 years. Harry's office occupied the entire 40th floor of a building Gerald and I had developed in the 90s. He listened gravely as I explained the situation, occasionally removing his wire-rimmed glasses to clean them, his tell when he was deeply troubled. Christy, this is serious. We need to get ahead of this immediately. That's why I'm here, Harry. I need to transfer all my assets into an irrevocable trust. Something bulletproof, something even a corrupt judge couldn't crack. Harry's fingers flew over his keyboard. I'm thinking a dynasty trust with you as the primary beneficiary during your lifetime. We'll name a corporate trustee. My firm can serve in that capacity. No family members involved whatsoever. Perfect. And Harry, I need this done yesterday. Complete secrecy. Consider it handled. But Christy, there's something else we should discuss. Your current will leaves everything to Mark. The words tasted bitter. Draw up a new one. Leave him. Leave him $1, so he can't contest it. Harry's expression softened. I'm sorry it's come to this. So am I. But he made his choice. While Harry worked his legal magic, I turned my attention to the penthouse. If Jennifer wanted to play burglar, I'd give her a stage worthy of Broadway. I hired a security company from out-of-state one with no connections to Chicago that Jennifer or Tony could exploit. They worked at night installing cameras so small they were virtually invisible. Every room, every angle, all feeding to a secure cloud server that not even I could access without multiple authentication steps. The pièce de résistance was the alarm system. On the surface, it looked like my standard setup, the one Jennifer had seen me use dozens of times. But underneath lay a secondary system with its own codes, its own monitoring station, and a special feature I specifically requested. "You want it to do what?" the technician asked, clearly puzzled. "If someone enters with the old codes between midnight and 6 a.m., I want it to trigger a silent alarm that goes directly to the police, but I also want it to allow entry. Let them think they've succeeded." He shrugged. "Your money, lady. We can make that happen." I also had them install a special safe in my bedroom closet. Not hidden, quite the opposite. I wanted it to be found. Inside, I placed a carefully crafted fake will dated just a week ago, leaving everything to Mark and Jennifer. I even had it witnessed by actors playing the role of neighbors. If they wanted evidence of my diminished capacity, they'd find a will so generous it would seem like the product of a manipulated mind. But the real masterstroke was the paper trail I created. Working with Sandra, we prepared documents showing the penthouse had been transferred to the trust 3 months earlier. The originals were filed in jurisdictions Jennifer and Tony couldn't access quickly. The copies in my home files, however, showed no such transfer. Let them think they were stealing from me when really they'd be breaking into property they had no claim to whatsoever. As February rolled into March, I began my performance. During family dinners, I'd occasionally forget Mark's birthday or mix up the names of properties. Nothing dramatic. Jennifer was drugging me after all, and I needed to show symptoms consistent with that. "Mom, are you feeling all right?" Mark asked one evening as I pretended to search for my reading glasses while wearing them. "Oh, just tired, sweetheart. You know how it is. So much to keep track of these days." Jennifer practically glowed. "That's why we keep offering to help. You don't have to do everything alone." "You're so sweet," I said, patting her hand while imagining it in handcuffs. "Maybe after my Florida trip we can talk about you taking on some responsibilities." The way they exchanged glances, I knew I'd dangled the perfect bait. They thought I was softening, preparing to hand over control. In reality, I was preparing to destroy them. 2 weeks before my planned departure, I made a show of organizing my papers. I called Jennifer over to help, knowing she'd report everything to Tony. "I just want to make sure everything's in order before I leave," I explained, shuffling through documents. "You never know what might happen when you're away." Jennifer's eyes tracked every paper, memorizing locations. I made sure she saw the safe combination written on a sticky note. "So I don't forget," I told her with a vacant smile. She practically vibrated with excitement. That night, Sandra's surveillance captured a crucial conversation. "She's perfect," Jennifer told Tony over the phone. "Completely clueless. She even showed me where she keeps everything. The safe combination was right there on a post-it note." "You sure this isn't a setup?" Tony's voice was cautious. "From her, please. You should see her, Tony. She can barely remember what day it is. Doc Morrison's special tea blend is working better than we hoped." "All right. You got the moving company lined up?" "Ready to go. The minute she leaves for Florida, we execute. By the time she gets back, she'll be headed straight to Sunny Acres Memory Care." What they didn't know was that I'd been in contact with Sunny Acres myself. The facility they'd chosen was under investigation for patient abuse and Medicare fraud. My lawyers had already filed injunctions preventing my admission there under any circumstances. but I wanted them to think their plan was flawless. The final piece of my trap involved the Florida trip itself. I made sure everyone knew I was going, posted about it on social media, mentioned it to neighbors, even asked the doorman to collect my mail. What I didn't advertise was that I'd hired a body double to stay at my beach house. A lovely actress named Margaret who looked enough like me from a distance to fool anyone watching. Because I wouldn't really be in Florida. I'd be in a hotel 10 blocks from my penthouse watching everything unfold on my laptop through those hidden cameras. "Are you sure about this?" Sandra asked during our final planning meeting. "It's dangerous. What if they become violent when cornered?" "That's why you'll have a team ready. The moment they cross the line from attempted fraud to actual crime, we move. I want FBI, local police, everyone. I want it to be spectacular." Once we involve the FBI, there's no going back. Your son will likely face serious prison time." I thought of the little boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd brought me dandelions and called them flowers. That child was gone, replaced by a man who would drug his own mother for money. He stopped being my son the moment he plotted to lock me away. Whatever happens to him, he's earned. March 15th arrived with unseasonable warmth. I made a big production of leaving for the airport, hugging Mark and Jennifer goodbye in my building's lobby. "Have a wonderful time, Mom," Mark said, and for just a moment his embrace felt genuine. Then I remembered the recordings, the plots, the betrayal. "Take care of yourselves," I replied, meaning something entirely different than they thought. As my taxi pulled away, I saw Jennifer on her phone, no doubt alerting Tony that the plan was in motion. They had no idea that instead of heading to O'Hare Airport, I was going to the Peninsula Hotel under an assumed name, where Sandra had set up a command center in a suite overlooking the city. "Margaret just checked into your beach house," Sandra reported as I settled in. "She's already posted a photo on your Instagram. Wine on the deck, perfect sunset. Very convincing." "Good. Now we wait. They probably won't move tonight. They'll want to make sure you're really gone." But I knew Jennifer better than Sandra did. Patience wasn't one of her virtues, especially with creditors breathing down her neck. Every day she waited was another day interest accumulated, another day closer to the dangerous people she owed, finally losing patience. "Trust me," I said, pouring myself a glass of wine. The good stuff, not the drugged tea Jennifer had been serving me. "She'll move fast. Probably tomorrow night. She can't help herself." As the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I settled in to watch the screens Sandra had arranged. Multiple angles of my penthouse, all crystal clear. The trap was set baited with everything Jennifer and Mark desired. Now all I had to do was wait for them to spring it. 3 days passed in tense anticipation. I watched my penthouse through the cameras like some vigilant ghost, observing the doorman's routine, the maintenance staff's schedules, even Mrs. Patterson from down the hall walking her ancient poodle at precisely 8 each morning. Sandra's team maintained round-the-clock surveillance, ready to move at a moment's notice. On the third night, March 18th, my patience was rewarded. At 11:45 p.m., a figure appeared in the lobby camera feed. Jennifer, dressed in black athletic wear like some bargain basement cat burglar, signed the visitor log with practiced ease. The night doorman Samuel barely looked up from his crossword puzzle. Why would he? She'd been visiting for years. "Going up to Watermom's plants," she chirped. "She always forgets to arrange that before traveling." "Such a thoughtful daughter-in-law," Samuel replied, buzzing her through. I leaned forward, my heart racing. "She's early. It's not even midnight." "Probably scouting," Sandra suggested. "Making sure everything's clear." But I knew better. Jennifer had never been one for reconnaissance. She was moving now tonight. I pulled up my phone and checked the Florida Instagram account Margaret was maintaining. A photo from 2 hours ago showed me at a beachside restaurant captioned, "Living my best life, Mai Tais and sunset views." Jennifer had seen it. She knew I was 2,500 miles away. In my bedroom camera, I watched her enter using the key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. She moved confidently, flipping on lights without hesitation. No skulking in shadows for her. She wanted to appear legitimate if anyone questioned her presence. "Arrogant," Sandra muttered. "She's not even trying to be subtle." Jennifer went straight to my home office, pulling out her phone. "I'm in," she said presumably to Tony, starting with the files. For 20 minutes, she photographed every document in my filing cabinet. The fake property deeds, the falsified bank statements I'd carefully planted, even the bogus investment portfolios showing millions in liquid assets. She was so focused on her treasure hunt that she never noticed the tiny red lights of the cameras recording her every move. At 12:27 a.m., Tony arrived. Unlike his sister, he at least attempted stealth, wearing dark clothes and keeping his head down. But my facial recognition software tagged him instantly. "Did anyone see you?" Jennifer asked as she let him in. "Nah, used the service entrance. Guard was half asleep. You find the safe?" "In the bedroom closet, just like she showed me. I've got the combination." They moved to my bedroom, and I watched Jennifer punch in the numbers from the Post-it note. The safe opened with a satisfying click, revealing the fake will and other planted documents. "Holy shit!" Tony breathed, scanning the pages. "She really did leave them everything. This is dated last week. I told you the tea was working. She's so far gone she probably thought she was doing something nice for her loving family." They high-fived like teenagers who'd successfully raided the liquor cabinet. Then Jennifer pulled out her phone again. "Yeah, it's me. Bring the truck around back. We're clearing this place out tonight." "They're actually going to rob the place?" Sandra asked, incredulous. "Every criminal makes one fatal mistake," I replied. "Greed. They could have stuck with the guardianship scam, but they want it all right now." By 2 a.m., a moving truck had backed up to the service entrance. 3 men I didn't recognize began loading my belongings under Jennifer and Tony's direction. They took everything valuable. The Tiffany lamps Gerald had collected, the Persian rugs we'd bought on our anniversary trip to Istanbul, even the oil painting of Lake Michigan I'd commissioned from a local artist. "That painting's worth maybe $500, I told Sandra. "But she's taking it anyway, like a locust." "We've got enough," Sandra said, reaching for her phone. "I'm calling it in." "Not yet. I want the big moment. I want her to claim ownership." Sandra looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but she waited. We watched them strip my home bare, Jennifer occasionally stopping to take selfies with my belongings, like some demented influencer. At 3:58 a.m. it happened. Jennifer was in my kitchen pouring herself a victory glass of my vintage champagne when the new alarm system engaged. She'd been there over 4 hours. The system was programmed to activate if anyone stayed past that threshold. The siren was deafening. Jennifer shrieked, dropping the champagne bottle. It shattered on my marble floor $1,000 wine, mixing with crystal shards. "What the hell?" Tony roared, running in from the bedroom where he'd been rifling through my jewelry box. Jennifer frantically punched buttons on the alarm panel, but the old codes didn't work on the new system. The siren continued its piercing wail. Within minutes, the building's security arrived, followed shortly by 2 Chicago PD units responding to the automatic alert. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Through the cameras, I watched Jennifer transform. The panic melted away, replaced by imperious indignation. She smoothed her hair, straightened her shoulders, and met the officers at the door like she owned the place. Which, of course, is exactly what she claimed. "Officers, I'm so sorry about this confusion," she said, her voice dripping with false authority. "I'm Jennifer Whitman, the new owner. We're just moving some things, and I must have triggered the alarm by mistake." "Ma'am, We're going to need to see some identification and proof of ownership." The older officer said, his hand resting on his radio. Jennifer produced her driver's license and the forged deed she'd been carrying. "As you can see, the property was transferred to me last week. My mother-in-law, Christy, is in Florida. She's been having some health issues, memory problems. That's why she signed the place over to family." The officers examined the documents while Tony lurked in the background, his law enforcement experience making him smart enough to stay quiet. The movers had disappeared at the first sound of sirens abandoning a truck full of my belongings in the loading dock. "Ma'am, it's 4 a.m, the younger officer noted. "Unusual time for a move." "We wanted to avoid disrupting the neighbors during normal hours," Jennifer replied smoothly. "Plus, with work schedules, this was the only time we could manage it." The building's security chief, Paul Martinez, arrived just as Jennifer was spinning her tale. I'd briefed Paul weeks ago, ensuring he knew exactly what to do. "Excuse me, officers," Paul interrupted. "I need to inform you that any ownership transfer requires notification to building management. We have no record of Mrs. Whitman selling or transferring this unit." Jennifer's mask slipped for just a moment. That must be an oversight. The lawyers probably haven't filed the paperwork yet." At 4 a.m., the older officer asked, his skepticism clear. "I can call Mrs. Whitman right now," Paul offered, pulling out his phone. "Clear this whole thing up." "No," Jennifer said too quickly, then caught herself. "I mean, she's elderly and in Florida. We shouldn't wake her. I'm sure this can all be sorted out in the morning." The officer's radio crackled. "Unit 437, be advised, the property owner is on the line with dispatch. She states no authorization was given for anyone to be in her residence." Jennifer's face went white. Tony stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. "Officers, I'm an attorney. There's clearly been a miscommunication here. My client has documentation." "Forged documentation," I said clearly through the speakerphone as Paul held it up. "Hello, officers. This is Christy Whitman. I'm watching everything through my security system. Those people have broken into my home and are stealing my belongings. The woman claiming to be the owner is my daughter-in-law, and she has no authorization to be there." "Mom," Jennifer's voice cracked. "How are you?" "Watching you commit felony burglary technology is wonderful, isn't it, dear?" The transformation was instant. The officer's casual stance shifted to high alert. Hands moved to weapons. The older officer spoke into his radio, calling for additional units. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step outside with your hands visible," he instructed Jennifer. "This is a mistake," she cried. "She's confused. She has dementia. Tell them, Tony." But Tony, showing the survival instincts that had kept him out of prison despite his disbarment, was already backing away. "I don't know anything about this. She called me to help her move. I thought it was legitimate." "You lying piece of garbage," Jennifer screamed, lunging at her brother. The officers moved quickly, separating them and calling for backup. Within minutes, my penthouse was swarming with police. Jennifer and Tony were in handcuffs being read their rights, while crime scene photographers documented the half-emptied apartment. "Mrs. Whitman," the lead detective spoke to me through Paul's phone. "We're going to need you to come in and make a statement." "I'll be there within the hour," I promised. "But first you might want to check the moving truck in the loading dock. I believe you'll find it's full of stolen property." As I ended the call, Sandra was already packing up our surveillance equipment. "That was beautifully played, Christy, but you know this is just the beginning, right? There's still Mark to deal with." I nodded, feeling suddenly exhausted despite the adrenaline. My son hadn't shown up for the robbery, but I knew he was involved. The recordings made that clear. He was just smart enough to maintain plausible deniability. "One at a time," I said, gathering my things. "Jennifer and Tony are finished. Now let's go make sure they stay that way." As we left the hotel, dawn was breaking over Chicago. The city was waking up to a new day, and somewhere across town, my son was about to get a phone call that would shatter his carefully constructed plans. I felt no satisfaction, not yet. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. And justice, I'd learned, was a patient hunter. The real showdown was yet to come. The ride to the police station felt surreal. Chicago's early morning streets were just beginning to fill with commuters, people starting their normal days while my world had irrevocably changed. Sandra drove while I sat in the passenger seat watching the city pass by through windows tinted by more than just glass. "You did the right thing," Sandra said quietly, navigating through traffic. "Did I?" I stared at my hands, remembering how they'd once cradled baby Mark, taught him to tie his shoes, applauded at his college graduation. "I just sent my son's wife to jail." "She sent herself to jail. You just provided the transportation." At the station, I was met by Detective Raymond Washington, a tall man with kind eyes and 30 years of experience written in the lines of his face. He led me to a comfortable interview room, a far cry from the interrogation chambers you see on television. "Mrs. Whitman, I've reviewed the security footage you provided. It's comprehensive, but I need to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with here." For the next 2 hours, I laid out everything. The forged medical records, the drugged tea, the guardianship plot, Sandra's surveillance recordings. I provided copies of every document, every piece of evidence we'd gathered. Detective Washington's expression grew increasingly grim as the full picture emerged. "This goes beyond simple burglary," he said finally. "We're looking at conspiracy, elder abuse, attempted kidnapping, fraud. This is FBI territory." "FBI. I hadn't expected that." "Cross-state financial fraud conspiracy involving multiple parties, forged medical documents. Yeah, the feds will want this." He paused, studying me. "Your son, Mark. How involved is he?" I closed my eyes, hearing again those recorded conversations. "Very. But he was smart enough to stay away tonight. We'll need those recordings, all of them." By the time I finished at the station, news of the arrests had spread. My phone buzzed incessantly. Reporters, concerned friends, business associates. I ignored them all except one. "Mom!" Mark's voice was panicked. "What's going on? I just got a call that Jennifer's been arrested." "Where are you, Mark?" "Home. Mom, there must be some mistake. The police are saying she broke into your place. That's impossible. You gave her a key." His performance was convincing. If I hadn't heard the recordings, I might have believed him. "Mark, I need you to listen very carefully. I know everything. The tea Jennifer was giving me, Dr. Morrison, the plan to have me declared incompetent. Everything." Silence. Then, "I don't know what you're talking about." "I have recordings, Mark. Your voice planning my imprisonment. Did you really think I'd built a real estate empire by being stupid?" The silence stretched longer this time. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed, harder and colder. "You were supposed to be in Florida." "Ah, so we're done pretending." "Jennifer said the doses were working. You were getting confused, forgetful." "I poured that tea down the drain every single time, son. Though I kept samples. The police have them now along with everything else." I heard something crash in the background, Mark cursing. Then unbelievably, he laughed. "You played us. My own mother played us like fiddles. You tried to destroy me, Mark. You who I loved more than life itself. Why, his laugh turned bitter. "Do you know what it's like being Christy Whitman's son, never good enough, never successful enough? Dad built that company with you, but everyone acts like it was all you. The great Christy, the real estate queen. And what am I, middle management at a firm that wouldn't look twice at me without your name? So you decided to steal what I built instead of building something yourself. Jennifer had debts, big ones. The kind where people hurt you if you don't pay. We needed money fast. I would have helped you." The words tore from my throat. "All you had to do was ask." For $500,000, sure, Mom. You would have written that check right after the lecture about responsibility and disappointment. Jennifer was going to lose her job. Maybe go to prison. We were desperate. And now she's definitely going to prison. How's that for irony? This is your fault, Mark exploded. If you'd acted like a normal mother retired, let us help with the business instead of guarding it like some dragon with gold. A normal mother doesn't drug her tea, Mark. I didn't know about that at first. Jennifer said she was giving you vitamin supplements to help with your memory. By the time I found out the truth, we were too deep. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But the recording said otherwise. He'd known. He'd participated. He'd chosen money over his mother. Mark, the FBI is now involved. They'll be coming for you. I suggest you find a very good lawyer. Mom, please, I'm your son, your only child. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything, until you plotted to lock me in a facility and steal my life's work. I never wanted to hurt you, we just needed the money. Jennifer said you'd be comfortable, cared for. It wasn't supposed to be like this. No, it was supposed to be worse. I was supposed to be drugged, confused, and terrified while strangers controlled my life. While you and Jennifer spent my money and visited me once a month out of guilt. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, there has to be a way to fix this. Through the window of the small conference room I'd borrowed at the station, I could see Detective Washington talking to two people in dark suits. FBI from the look of them. There is no fixing this, Mark. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. You're really going to let them arrest me? Your own son. You stopped being my son the moment you chose greed over love. Goodbye, Mark. I hung up my hands, shaking. Sandra, who'd been silent through the conversation, handed me a tissue. I hadn't realized I was crying. He might run, she said gently. He won't get far. His passport is flagged. His accounts are frozen. The FBI doesn't play games. Detective Washington knocked and entered with the two federal agents. Mrs. Whitman, these are Special Agents Chen and Rodriguez from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. Agent Rodriguez, a woman about Jennifer's age with sharp brown eyes, took the lead. We've reviewed the evidence. This is one of the most comprehensive elder fraud cases we've seen. Your documentation is impeccable. I had help, I said, nodding toward Sandra. We'll be filing federal charges against Jennifer Whitman, Tony Castellano, and Mark Whitman. We're also investigating Dr. Harold Morrison and several courthouse employees who may have facilitated the document fraud. What kind of charges? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Agent Chen consulted his notes. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse, wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, forgery of government documents, and that's just the federal charges. The state will add their own: burglary, theft, false imprisonment, conspiracy, and more. How much time are we talking about? If convicted on all counts, Jennifer and Tony are looking at 20 to 30 years. Your son, depending on his level of cooperation, 15 to 20. 20 years. My baby boy could spend 20 years in prison. The numbers felt unreal, impossible. But then I remembered the recording. Once she's declared incompetent, everything we've done becomes retroactively legitimate. They'd planned to bury me alive. 20 years seemed lenient by comparison. The agents left with promises to be in touch. Sandra drove me home past the news vans already gathering outside my building. Someone had leaked the story. Tomorrow it would be everywhere. Real estate mogul foils children's murder plot, or some equally sensational headline. But as we pulled into the garage, avoiding the cameras, I realized I didn't care about the headlines. I cared about the empty penthouse waiting for me, stripped of its treasures by the woman I'd welcomed as a daughter. I cared about the son I'd lost not to death, but to greed. "Do you want me to stay?" Sandra asked as we rode the elevator up. "No, I need to see it alone." My penthouse looked like a crime scene, which I supposed it was. Fingerprint dust on surfaces, evidence markers, the broken champagne bottle still glittering on my kitchen floor. They'd taken so much, not just things, but memories. The lamp Gerald bought in Morocco, the rug where Mark took his first steps. But they hadn't taken everything. They couldn't steal the sunrise still painting Lake Michigan gold outside my windows. They couldn't take the strength that had built this empire from nothing. They couldn't steal my future, though they'd certainly tried. I poured myself a glass of wine, a simple vintage nothing fancy, and stood at those windows Gerald had loved so much. "Well, my darling," I said to his memory, "our boy lost his way, but I'm still here, still fighting, still winning." Tomorrow would bring lawyers and reporters and the long journey through the justice system. But tonight in my empty palace above the city, I raised my glass to survival. They'd tried to bury me. They'd forgotten I was a seed. The next 6 months passed in a blur of legal proceedings, media attention, and personal reckoning. The story of my family's betrayal became national news, spawning think pieces about elder abuse and family fraud. I declined all interview requests, letting my lawyers speak for me. The truth was sensational enough without my commentary. Jennifer was denied bail. The judge, after reviewing the evidence of her gambling debts and connections to dangerous people, deemed her a flight risk. The image of her in an orange jumpsuit, her perfect blonde waves now showing dark roots, became a tabloid favorite. She looked smaller, somehow diminished without her designer clothes and false charm. Tony flipped immediately, offering to testify against his sister in exchange for a reduced sentence. Family loyalty. It seemed only extended as far as convenience. His testimony revealed the broader scope of their operation. Jennifer had done this before to an elderly client at her financial firm. That woman, Margaret Sinclair, had died before realizing her life savings were gone. Her children thought she'd spent it all on shopping and cruises, never suspecting fraud. The FBI added murder charges to their investigation, though proving Jennifer had hastened Mrs. Sinclair's death would be difficult. Still, it established a pattern that made my situation look less like a family dispute and more like the work of a serial predator. Mark's arrest came 3 weeks after Jennifer's. He'd tried to run despite my warning, made it as far as Canada before being detained at the border. The image of him being led away in handcuffs broke something in me that I thought was already shattered. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, found me sobbing in the hallway that day. "Oh, honey," she said, guiding me into her apartment. "You did what you had to do." "He's my son," I wept into her shoulder. "My baby boy." "No, sweetie. Your baby boy died a long time ago. This man just wore his face." Dr. Harold Morrison's arrest made me physically ill. He'd been drugging elderly patients for years, creating false diagnoses for families who wanted to seize control of assets. 17 victims were identified, though authorities suspected there were more. 3 had died in the facilities where they'd been wrongly committed. I testified before a grand jury, laying out every detail of the conspiracy. The prosecutor, a young woman named Maria Santos, prepped me thoroughly. "They're going to try to paint you as a cold, calculating woman who entrapped her own family," she warned. "Be prepared for that narrative." Let them. I'd rather be seen as cold than dead. The trial began in September. Jennifer, Tony, and Mark were tried together, their defense teams barely able to coordinate a coherent strategy. Jennifer's lawyer went with the desperate woman driven to extremes defense. Tony's claimed he was just helping his sister and had no idea about the larger plot. Mark's attorney, the most expensive of the 3, tried to argue that his client was manipulated by his wife. None of it worked. The evidence was overwhelming. My security footage, the recordings Sandra had gathered, the forged documents, Dr. Morrison's confession. It painted a picture of calculated cruelty that shocked even seasoned court watchers. Jennifer took the stand in her own defense, a decision her lawyer clearly opposed. She cried prettily, talking about her gambling addiction, her desperate circumstances, how she never meant for things to go so far. "I loved Christy like a mother," she sobbed. "I just needed help and I was too proud to ask." On cross-examination, Maria Santos destroyed her. "You loved her like a mother. Is that why you drugged her tea?" "I didn't know what was in it. Dr. Morrison said it was just supplements." "These supplements that you never took yourself, that you were careful to only serve to Mrs. Whitman?" I thought they were specifically for her age-related needs." "I see. And when you were photographed trying on Mrs. Whitman's jewelry during the burglary, were you checking it for age-related needs?" The security photo appeared on the courtroom screen. Jennifer posing with my mother's diamond necklace, taking a selfie while my home was being robbed. That's not what it looks like." "No. What does it look like, Mrs. Whitman? Because to me, it looks like you're celebrating the successful robbery of a woman you claim to love like a mother." Jennifer had no answer. Her tears, I noticed, had stopped the moment she realized they weren't working. Mark's testimony was worse, though, for different reasons. He appeared genuinely remorseful, breaking down as he described how the plan had spiraled out of control. "I never wanted any of this," he said, looking directly at me. "I just wanted to help Jennifer with her debts. It started small. We were just going to borrow some money, pay it back. But then she said we needed more, and the plan kept growing, and before I knew it..." "Before you knew it, you were planning to have your mother declared incompetent and institutionalized?" Maria asked sharply. "I didn't think. Jennifer said the facility was nice, like a retirement community. Mom would be cared for." "Did you ever visit this facility?" "No." "Did you know it was under investigation for patient abuse?" "No, I swear I didn't know that." "What exactly did you think would happen to your mother, Mr. Whitman? A woman you describe as sharp, independent, and capable. How did you think she'd react to being forcibly medicated and confined?" Mark's shoulders shook with sobs. "I don't know. I wasn't thinking. I was so deep in it, and Jennifer kept saying it would all work out." "So you chose your wife over your mother." "I chose wrong," Mark whispered. "I chose wrong, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I believed him. Despite everything I believed, his regret was real. But regret doesn't erase action. Apologies don't undo betrayal. The jury deliberated for less than a day, guilty on all counts for all 3 defendants. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Jennifer received 25 years, eligible for parole in 15. The judge called her a predator who targeted society's most vulnerable and noted the particular cruelty of using family connections to facilitate fraud. Tony got 18 years, his cooperation earning him a slightly reduced sentence. He'd still be an old man when he got out, his dreams of regaining his law license forever shattered. Mark received 12 years. The judge acknowledged his lesser role and genuine remorse, but stated firmly, betraying a parent's trust for financial gain strikes at the very foundation of family bonds. This court cannot and will not treat such actions lightly. As they led my son away, he turned to look at me one last time. "I'm sorry, Mom," he mouthed. I nodded, unable to speak. Forgiveness would come perhaps someday, but not today. After the sentencing, I stood outside the courthouse, breathing in the crisp October air. Reporters shouted questions, but I walked past them to where Sandra waited by her car. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Empty," I admitted. "Victorious and empty at the same time. Is that possible?" "After what you've been through, I'd say it's inevitable." That evening, I returned to my penthouse, now restored with new furnishings. Insurance had covered the stolen items, but I hadn't replaced most of them. The space felt different now, lighter somehow, less cluttered with the past. My phone rang. "Harry, my attorney." "Christy, I thought you should know. The FBI has recovered most of the assets Jennifer and Tony tried to hide. And there's more. They've linked Jennifer to 3 other elderly victims. You've helped expose a major fraud ring." "That's good," I said, though the words felt hollow. "There's something else. Mark's lawyer has been in touch. He wants to sign over all rights to any family assets, including anything he might have inherited. He says he doesn't deserve a penny from you." "Draw up the papers," I said quietly. "I'll create a trust for any future grandchildren should he have them, but nothing for him. Not anymore." "Understood. Christy, you did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you saved yourself and possibly others." After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my windows watching the city lights twinkle below. Somewhere out there, families were gathering for dinner, sharing their days, building memories. My family was in prison, destroyed by greed and my refusal to be a victim. But I was still here, still strong, still standing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities. The real estate empire I'd built would continue to grow. The foundation I planned to start would help other seniors protect themselves. And maybe someday I'd find a way to fill the empty spaces in my heart. Tonight, though, I raised my glass to justice. It had come at a price higher than I'd ever imagined paying. But I'd survived to pay it. 2 years passed like chapters in a book I was still learning to read. The media attention eventually died down, replaced by new scandals and fresher tragedies. I threw myself into work expanding my real estate portfolio and establishing the Whitman Foundation for Elder Protection. What started as a way to channel my pain became a passion that gave my life new meaning. The Foundation's first major initiative was a series of free seminars for seniors and their families, teaching them to recognize the warning signs of financial abuse. I spoke at everyone, sharing my story without shame or hesitation. Predators don't always come from the outside, I tell packed auditoriums. Sometimes they sit at your dinner table, call you mom, and smile while they plot your destruction. Trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. One evening after a particularly well-attended seminar in Milwaukee, a distinguished man approached me. Silver-haired with kind blue eyes and a gentle smile, he introduced himself as Robert Chen. "I'm a retired federal prosecutor," he said, shaking my hand. "I wanted to thank you for what you're doing. I worked elder abuse cases for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone turn personal trauma into such powerful advocacy." We talked for an hour long after the auditorium had emptied. Robert had lost his wife to cancer 5 years earlier and understood the loneliness that could make seniors vulnerable. "Isolation is a predator's best friend," he said. "When you're alone, you're more likely to overlook red flags because you're so grateful for the attention." "Is that what happened to me?" I asked. Was I so lonely after Gerald died that I couldn't see what Jennifer really was? "No," Robert said firmly. "You were targeted by sophisticated criminals. Loneliness didn't make you a victim. Love did. You loved your son and wanted to believe the best of his wife. That's not weakness, Christy. That's humanity." We began meeting for coffee, then dinner, then long walks along the lakefront. Robert made me laugh for the first time in years, sharing stories from his prosecutorial days and his current hobby of terrible golf. "I'm absolutely awful," he admitted cheerfully. "But I figure at my age the point is to enjoy the sunshine and the company, not the score." 6 months after we met, Robert attended one of my seminars in Chicago. Afterward, a young woman approached us, tears streaming down her face. "Mrs. Whitman, I just wanted to thank you. Your story saved my grandmother. My uncle was doing the same thing, drugging her, trying to get power of attorney. We watched your seminar online and it opened our eyes. We got her help in time." Stories like hers became common. The foundation received letters daily from families who'd recognized abuse patterns and taken action. We partnered with law enforcement agencies to provide training, worked with legislators to strengthen elder protection laws, and created a hotline for seniors who suspected they were being targeted. 1 year after the trial, I received a letter from Mark. I'd gotten others: apologies, pleas for forgiveness, updates on his participation in prison therapy programs. I'd read them all but never responded. This one was different. Dear Mom, I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I'm writing to tell you that I finally understand what I did. Not just the crime, but the betrayal. In group therapy yesterday, I had to role-play being you. I had to sit there while someone playing me plotted against me, and I broke down completely. You gave me everything: love, support, opportunities, and I repaid you with conspiracy and cruelty. I chose money over mother greed, over gratitude. I see now that I didn't just try to steal your assets. I tried to steal your dignity, your freedom, your future. I'm working on myself. Real work, not just going through the motions. I want to be a better man when I get out, even if you never speak to me again. Especially if you never speak to me again. I need to be better for myself, to honor the mother who raised me right, even though I went so wrong. I love you, Mom. I know I have no right to say that anymore, but it's true. And I'm proud of what you're doing with the foundation. You turned our crime into a crusade to help others. That's the mother I threw away for money I never even got to spend. Your son, if I can still call myself that, Mark. I read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination, and I wasn't ready to complete that trip. But for the first time, I could imagine a future where Mark and I might find our way back to some kind of relationship. Not as mother and son, perhaps, but as 2 people who'd survived a terrible storm from opposite sides. Robert and I married the following spring in a simple ceremony on the beach behind my Florida house. 20 guests, mostly friends from the foundation, and Robert's children from his first marriage, who'd welcomed me with open arms. You sure you want to marry a prosecutor? Robert's daughter Linda teased at the reception. We're not known for being the life of the party. Your father makes me laugh every day, I told her. That's party enough for me. We honeymooned in Italy, visiting all the places Gerald and I had never gotten to see. It felt right somehow, building new memories while honoring old dreams. Robert understood that Gerald would always be part of my story, just as his late wife Sarah would always be part of his. We're not replacing them, he said one evening as we watched the sunset from our hotel in Tuscany. We're adding new chapters to lives they helped us write. The foundation grew beyond my wildest dreams. We opened offices in 5 cities, employed a staff of 50, and helped prosecute over 200 cases of elder fraud. Jennifer's name became synonymous with family predators, her story a cautionary tale that saved countless seniors from similar fates. I occasionally wondered about her locked away in federal prison. Did she feel remorse? Had she found any kind of redemption? The answer came when she tried to contact me through her lawyer, seeking a letter of support for her first parole hearing. She says she's changed, the lawyer explained. Found religion helps other inmates, teaches literacy classes. Good for her, I replied. But she'll have to prove her change to someone else. I've given Jennifer all the support she'll ever get from me. The parole was denied. She'd serve at least another 5 years before her next hearing. Justice grinding slow, but grinding fine. Mark was released after serving 8 years of his 12-year sentence. His good behavior and genuine rehabilitation earning him early parole. He sent word through Harry that he was out working at a halfway house and continuing his therapy. He wants you to know he's respecting your boundaries, Harry reported. He won't contact you unless you reach out first. I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I never would be. but I was glad he was rebuilding his life, becoming the man I'd raised him to be before greed poisoned his soul. As I stand here today at 72, looking out at the same lake view that witnessed my darkest moment, I'm filled with gratitude. Not for the betrayal, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but for the strength it revealed, the purpose it gave me, and the love it eventually brought into my life. Robert is in the kitchen badly singing along to the radio while he makes his famous terrible pancakes. The Foundation's latest report sits on my desk, showing we've helped recover over $50 million for elder fraud victims. And somewhere in my drawer, carefully preserved, is a letter from a son who learned too late that money means nothing compared to love. The alarm that woke me at 4 a.m. 3 years ago wasn't just about my apartment. It was a wake-up call to a new life, a new purpose, a new understanding of what really matters. Jennifer thought she was stealing my future. Instead, she gave me a mission. To everyone reading this, remember, you are never too old to fight back, never too trusting to learn caution, never too hurt to help others. And sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best transformations. Trust your instincts, protect your assets, love your family, but verify their intentions. And if someone tries to convince you that age makes you weak, show them how wrong they are. We're not victims, we're survivors, and we're just getting started. So I ask you, have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-preservation? How did you handle betrayal from someone you trusted completely? What would you have done in my shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more about protecting yourself and your loved ones from financial predators. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing that they're not alone, that survival is possible, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find strength in your struggles, wisdom in your wounds, and hope in your healing. Remember, we're never too old to start over, never too hurt to help others, and never too wise to keep learning. Stay strong, stay smart, and stay safe. With love and determination, Christy.